At Piedmont, we know that a breast cancer diagnosis is one of the most overwhelming things you can hear. From the moment you walk in the door, we're committed to providing you with complete breast cancer care. Piedmont is the first and only healthcare system in Georgia to qualify as a certified member of MD Anderson Cancer Network, a program of MD Anderson Cancer Center, a leading cancer care provider. And with locations in Noonan, Fayette, and Henry, expert care is closer than ever. Learn more at piedmont.org/breastsouth.
Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the R.E.I.G.N Blog Talk Radio Show with your host, Minister and Beth. And you're listening to it on the WIN Network. Yes, that's right, WIN Network. Together, we win. Stay tuned. Hand it down, praise. Let it out, shackles, the chain, the hurt, the guilt, the stain. I'm more than a conqueror. I'm more than a victim. I fight, I win. The chains are broken. 'Cause I reign, you reign, we reign, he reigns. I reign, we reign together, together.
Well, we have been reunited again. Welcome to the third season and our premiere of the R.E.I.G.N radio show. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for listening in. It has just been just phenomenal, this journey. I was just looking through some of our data, and we have now Russia joining in to listen in. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'm going to take that as good. We have people from New Zealand listening in, so we've added Italy and even London. And so that brings us to a total of about 15 other countries that are listening into our show, and of course spanning all across the United States and Canada. I have to say, mwah, it's all because of you that we are still here and doing what we need to do to try to abolish sex trafficking. So my most heartfelt thank you for joining us tonight. And of course, you know who I am. I am Minister Annie Bell, the host and creator of R.E.I.G.N Blog Talk Radio Show. This is an outreach of Wealth Management Ministries Incorporated. Now, during this program, what we endeavor to do is to bring talk therapy for survivors of child abuse and sex trafficking, as well as other traumas. But we also want to provide awareness, prevention, and resources to the community so that they themselves can be armed with what they need to be able to go out here and make a difference. So tonight, Change for Good, from Pimp to Advocate. That's the name of our show. Now, the pimp culture has been glamorized and glorified for way too long. Shows like Pimp My Ride, Pimp My House, and the comedian, even Cat Williams, has a comedy act that he calls the Pimp Chronicles, 1 and 2. Now, I watch him because he is hilarious to me. I think he says some bad words, but, I try to tune those out. But he is a funny man. But, again, it adds to glorifying the pimp culture and making it mainstream and almost normalizing it, making it palatable. Now, even in our vernacular has embraced the word pimp, and to describe something impressive or showy or grand. In actuality, pimp and or pimping is one of the most nefarious jobs or acts that I can think of. Many people disagree, but the word pimp is synonymous to a trafficker. Now, they are essentially the same thing. That person is the facilitator of sex for purchase, and they get the lion's share of, if not all of the money earned on the backs and the knees of the victims, the prostitutes, in the game. So violence, coercion, manipulation are all part of the methodologies used by the traffickers to groom, control, sell the women, girls, and boys for sex. Tonight, however, here to tell us about the real pimp game, what it really looks like in the day in the life of a pimp and of a prostitute, is Mr. Terry Eiland. He is an ex-pimp. He is an ex, what would you call it, drug dealer, but he has turned a full 180 and has now become an advocate. And so right now, he is the associate producer for a docudrama that came out last year called Black Girls Die Too. And you guys probably remember that because we were at the premiere. We were allowed access at the premiere of the movie. And so we want to welcome Mr. Eiland, Terry Eiland, to the studio. Welcome, Mr. Eiland.
Thank you, Minister Bell.
Welcome. So, before we get started with all the nitty gritty, as my dad used to say, tell us a little bit about yourself. Currently, about your family, where you live.
Well, for the past 5 years, I resided in Austell, Georgia, near Six Flags, and my family is originally from Pine Mountain, Georgia, and we had a bootlegging legacy that kind of culminated with the murder in Coweta County story. Some of your listeners may have seen the movie or read the book, but the blacks involved in that movie were my family.
Wow.
Now I get my strongest support from my fiance, who has been my companion for 45 years this month. And we've had ups and downs as any human beings, but that has been my strongest support.
Amen.
And
well, we want to give a shout out to your fiance. I don't know if this is a common law state, but I don't know if y'all technically married after 45 years, but that is huge that you have such a great support, from someone who obviously cares so much.
It's greater than huge. It's greater than huge, Minister Bell, because from 1979 until 2012, I was in the Georgia penal system. And she stuck it out.
Wow, that's just here recently, 2012.
I have to salute her and all supportive black women, and especially those such as yourself who are in this struggle. And whether it's stopping abuse or abolishing sex trafficking or trying to get the kids off of the street corners, we need more participation in positive and productive endeavors.
Yes, thank you for that. I appreciate it. It is hard. It's a hard job trying to advocate because there's so many twists and turns. There's so much with legislature and just the minds of those who have already been hurt, and looking at articles and reading details of the abuse and the details of sex trafficking. It is horrendous, and so sometimes it becomes so much that I have to step away just for a moment. But what makes me continue is that when I think about every day, like right now, this very moment, there are hundreds and thousands of children being abused, women, boys, and girls being sold for sex, and I can't rest. So, but I thank you for your kind words. Let's go ahead and get started. Tell me, first of all, how did you even get started in the game as a pimp?
Well, I got started in the game during 1970. I had joined the Marine Corps at 17, and I was home on leave and met a girl who had run away from the Carrie Steele Pitts Home for Girls here in Atlanta. And we lost contact after I left on the leave. But when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was at home with another woman, and she knocked on the door, and I hadn't seen her in like a couple of years. And we got back together, and in less than a month, I found out that rather than working as a waitress as she claimed to be and bringing her tip money home and such, I found out that she was a prostitute. And upon confronting her about it, her response to me was, "It can be for you if you're man enough to accept it." And I went to my father, who was basically street and a hustler, and interrupted a poker game. "Man, I need to talk to you." And he was like, "What?" And I tell him, "The girl is a prostitute." And it was like, "And?" I said, "I love her." He said, "You love her, but did you turn her out?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, you got to understand that if you don't accept the money, then she's going to go to somebody who will." And that convoluted logic at that time was sufficient because that was my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the models that I aspired to. And basically, I backed into the game. And I started to play it by ear, by association with others, some who are still living, some who are deceased.
Mm-hmm.
And with the passing of time, I learned more and more about the game because the girl was basically teaching me.
Wow. So this is not the traditional format where a pimp, someone who's already a pimp or trafficker, goes and solicits for others to become a prostitute. It actually was the other way around. A prostitute actually was coming to you to represent them as their pimp. So why did they come to you to be their pimp if they knew you were, new to the game or never been in the game? What made them come to you, her to come to you and even talk to you about it?
Well, one thing was that I was into the drug game on a small scale. I was also an armed robber, and I had a reputation for violence, and I could say that some of the factors were the need for protection. And at this time, there are several of my associates, past and present, who always viewed me as a decent guy. And when I got twisted, I started to embrace the things because of what they called the hooks, the money, the power. There was like a power involved. And I started to talk to other guys who was in the game, but there was always a tug at my heart because my value system was opposed to it on a much deeper level. And basically, I got caught up. It wasn't a conscious choice from the beginning. Well, my aspiration is going to be a pimp. But I have to confess that since high school, up until that time, my aspirations had been to either be a black Al Capone or a professional entertainer. And growing up as I did in the Vine City community here in Atlanta, and I was raised in a neighborhood when I lived in Noonan, Georgia. My neighborhood was called the Crack.
Wow.
And the Crack was, yes. And my neighborhood was called the Crack. And in the Crack, you know, you could find all manner of vice that was popular at that time. You know, the drug, this was prior to the advent of the saturation of our communities with drugs. But we're talking about bootlegging, playing a card game called the Georgia Skin, and there were women, you know, who was trading sex for pay. So a lot of the values that I embrace in what I now refer to as that subculture, because we were not a part of mainstream America. I grew up when Jim Crow was in his death throes. And
wow.
There were not many things that I aspired to beyond having the material advantages. And I wanted to get them by any means necessary. So this is what allowed me to abandon my values and embrace the game, the so-called fast lane, which I discovered later on in life after a couple of trips to prison that all avenues in the fast lane led to dead-end streets, and that wasn't where I wanted to go.
And I'm going to put a bookmark right there because we have to take a quick break. But when we come back, you know, I want to talk about that a little further and you know, get a little bit more detail about this game. And so everyone, please stay tuned, and we'll be right back after our station identification break. Hello, everybody. My name is Minister Annie Bell, and I am the host of R.E.I.G.N Blog Talk Radio Show, where we endeavor to bring talk therapy to survivors of child abuse, sex trafficking, and other traumas, as well as being the vehicle by which we use to bring awareness and resources to the community to aid in the prevention of these abuses. R.E.I.G.N, which is a declarative acronym for the individual survivor, that means I identify myself as a survivor, no longer a victim. R, reclaim my life. E, excel at living. I, illuminate the dark. G, grow in Christ. And N, nurture myself and others. This declarative acronym has developed into a victorious lifestyle brand that empowers and aids in the healing journey of our survivors of abuse, sex trafficking, and other traumas. I have also written a book entitled with the namesake, R.E.I.G.N, A Survivor's Guide to Thrive, which is now available at Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble. Pick up your copy today and join me every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. here on We Inspire Network Radio, where together, through God, we win. If we endure, we shall reign with Him.
Welcome back to R.E.I.G.N Blog Talk Radio Show with your host, Minister Annie Bell.
Annie Bell. I love the way he says my name. Anyway, welcome back. This is the R.E.I.G.N Blog Talk Radio Show. Tonight, we are here talking with an ex-pimp who has turned advocate, and to kind of chop it up about this pimp game that has been glamorized through the years, and now is again something that is looked upon as the bling, as a great thing, and it, to me, it's absolutely ridiculous. But you know, I want to talk about it a little bit more. So, Mr. Eiland, thank you again for coming on the show and being so transparent about the things that you have done in the past in order to help us get in front of this thing and prevent it. So thank you, and welcome back from commercial.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, at your highest number, at the highest point, how many prostitutes did you have working under you?
I'd like to preface that by saying that since the game has been glamorized, as you say, romanticized by Hollywood and such, there are many aspects of the game that comes under the umbrella of pimping.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also, I mean, if you use terms such as gigolo, where a man is paid for sex, there are a number of things, even the madams and such. It's all part of the phenomena of victimization.
Very true.
And
Very true.
yes, and for me, the word pimp equates to parasite, a bloodsucker, or a spirit sucker, you know, who consumes the spirit of other human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And as to if there are any particular aspects of the game, and in terms of my knowledge, you know, I would say that the root of the game could also be found paradoxically in the biblical projection that love is the strongest root of all.
Mm-hmm.
Because when a person is convinced that they love you, even if it's an unwholesome love, they will stop at nothing in order to be pleasing to you.
Mm-hmm.
And the material aspects of the game is like people say, I work to have the things that I want. And most of these girls they are low in self-esteem without realizing it, because it's like a sickness. And you represent something that they don't have in their lives, as someone to love them or to tell them that they're great, you know, in spite of the fact that they're draining the life out of them. So the bottom line is deception. We're talking a type of hypnosis of a sort. You know, there are a number of negatives that could be applied to it. But I think that there was a lady by the name of Donna Valentis who asked you if I would give some prevention advice and insights.
Yes, and I believe we're gonna talk about that a little later in the show. And Donna is actually from Australia, so she's one of our supporters and one of the advocates that work out in Australia. And I do want to talk about that, because that is the overarching reason, you know, to have you on the show, because we want to know from the inside, how do we stop this thing? You made some really, really great points, and you are, you know, so well versed and in your discussion, and I applaud you for that, and in able to communicate what is happening. But you're right, there is such a need. Again, most of the people who are prostituting and those who are victims of sex trafficking, they either have been abused in their childhood or being abused at that time, and so their self-esteem is low. They are told that they're nothing good, but for a good screw, and they're taught that they are nothing but an object. And so you hit the nail right on the head about that there is that desire to be loved and to feel convinced that somebody loves them. And I believe that's also part of the whole battered woman syndrome, where you have women who will stay with men who beat them to a bloody pulp, and all they have to do is say, baby, you know I love you. I'll never do that again. And they'll stay because of that love connection. So, yes, I think that is a great point that you made. So would you say you've had, how many prostitutes have you had at one time with the highest number? 6. And they were, even though, and so you were what would you categorize yourself as? More of a Romeo trafficker pimp, or more of a gorilla?
I would say a Romeo.
Mhm. Mhm. And just for the audience out there, there are two types. There are actually three, but we're going to talk about the two types today. But there is the guerrilla trafficker who normally utilizes brutality and violence, drugging their victims to coerce and to control. And then you have the Romeo trafficker, who's more of a smooth talker, who's going to, affirm their love and for that person and draw them into it, manipulate with words and with sometimes the words they sting, sometimes the words hurt, but again, it's more with the words. Is that how you kind of saw yourself as a Romeo pimp?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So what, I know that's not the most popular way. Were you given advice by other pimps to, on how to keep them in check?
Well, yes, I was, but I had always been a fish that swam against the current.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that I viewed as unnecessary, and then we go back to the depths of my own sickness, because I had seen my mother brutalized. You understand? And I grew up not liking men who beat women.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're talking about the depths of my sickness, because although I wasn't physically beating them, my objective was the same, to exploit them without caring what happened to them as a result. I didn't even consider it. I just considered the bottom line, as all pimps do. B, where is my money?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, that is such a infamous line. B, where is my money? But go ahead. I just want to interject that. Uh-huh.
Yes. So, in that regard, you can have such a deep psychological hole. I mean, I hate to say it in comparison, but it's the same type of thing. Look at what's happening under this current Trump atmosphere. Nobody is doing any thinking, but they following a sick man.
Got that right. Mhm.
I mean, who can explain that phenomena?
And one of the questions that I asked earlier was, why did the women want you to represent them as their pimp? And you were saying that part of the reason was you were a drug dealer as well, and that was really what you wanted to do, and so you held your own in that game, and they wanted to basically be represented by someone who are out there strutting their stuff, right? Got the
yes,
got
ma'am.
the goods, got the walk, got the stuff to show for the respect that you were demanding.
I once saw a movie years ago, and I was in prison at the time. And the main character in that movie was depicted as, a clean-cut guy who went to work in the morning, or he gave his wife the impression that he was on his way to work. And he would drive a certain distance away from his home in his old plucker, little used car and such. But he would drive off the road into the woods and pull the bushes back, and there was a Rolls Royce. And he would get in that Rolls Royce, and he would go to attend to his stable. This is why I say that there are so many aspects of this game that, because of the romanticism of Hollywood projection and, these novels about what the game is about, that people tend to lump everybody into the classic pimping mold. And that's simply not true, because I've known women with stables, and they weren't out there like that, in terms of strutting down and chasing the girls. You know, like the order went out from wherever they were headquartered, and these girls would go out and do their thing and bring the money back. I never marched up and down the street, you know, trying to check up on them, you know, and I really didn't call myself a pimp, although I know that I fell under that umbrella somewhere because I was not cut from that classic mold. And it's so hard to try and explain in a brief setting, because you asked at one time about what we have to do to stop this thing. But we have to always remain mindful of the projection about prostitution being the world's second oldest profession. And that's from a biblical standpoint, because Adam was supposedly a farmer or husbandman, you know, taking care of the animals and such. So that's why farming or agriculture is called the oldest profession, and prostitution is the second oldest. So how do we stop it when so many societies, even from biblical times, you know, they had the painted ladies in the Bible, the harlots as they called them, and they were yes, ma'am, they were prostitutes. But it was accepted by society because the women who were supposedly worthy or good girls, the prostitute were made available so that you didn't run the risk of going out there confronting a virtuous woman and having the men in her family stone you to death or behead you or something. So,
well, you know, when we look at that, it's not that the Bible condoned it.
No, not
Bible
that it condones it.
Yeah, Bible was just telling the story of that setting. But you're right. It does go back so far in history, which has molded our thinking, and so it is hard to break that. It is hard to break that which has been going on and the mindsets. And you know, one of the posts that we put on R.E.I.G.N, that I put on R.E.I.G.N the other day, was about how we as women, we don't want to be objectified and marginalized. However, we are quick, some of us are quick to throw our little hips up in the air and, you know, take a picture while we're posing and looking back on ourselves, or wearing, even in church, wearing, you know, stiletto heels and very, very short cut skirts, but then want to get mad when a man is attracted to that and looks at it. So there are so many different areas and avenues where we have to change mindsets and shift paradigms so that we can stop this objectification, marginalization, and exploitation of our vulnerable population. That was almost a rhyme. Now listen, I have to take another break. I'm sorry. So hang on just for a second, and then we'll be right back after this station identification. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Minister Lloyd Bell Jr., CEO of We Inspire Network Radio.
God bless you, and I am Minister Annie Bell, the COO of We Inspire Network Radio. We had you, our listeners, in mind when we created We Inspire Network Radio, or as we like to call it, WIN Radio.
We incorporated your thoughts and opinions to ensure that our programming will embody true inspiration.
And we will continue to bring relevant and heartfelt shows that cater to the needs and wants of our growing listener base.
Please subscribe to our network so that you can stay connected.
Join us here every week, where together, through God, we win.
Welcome back to R.E.I.G.N Blog Talk Radio Show with your host, Minister Annie Bell.
All right. We're on the second half of our show thank you for sticking around. And those who are just joining us, thank you for joining us. You are listening to the R.E.I.G.N Blog Talk Radio Show. For those who have just tuned in, again, R.E.I.G.N is powered by We Inspire Network, and we are a growing network. So if there's anyone out there who'd like to host their own show or maybe be a guest on one of our shows that we already have, feel free to contact us. And so we were talking to Mr. Terry Eiland, and he is an ex-pimp and turned advocate. So we were just talking about some of the things that happened during and why it happened. And we've taken it all the way back in history. So I want to thank you, Mr. Eiland, for staying on and allowing me to drill you the way I have tonight. I do have a question, though. We have a question from one of our listening audience who wants to know, what was that movie that you watched with the man in the Rolls Royce?
I can't recall the name of the movie, but I saw the movie. I saw the movie in prison, and I'm a fairly decent researcher. And I plan to hunt that down so that I can post it for their benefit.
Could you put, when you find it, post it on the R.E.I.G.N Facebook group, and so that, because inquiring minds want to know. So,
yes, ma'am.
Now, okay, so I want you to tell me, describe for me the day in the life of a pimp. How did the prostitutes get treated? Did you see or witness other pimps beating on the prostitutes, or buyers, the offenders, beating on the prostitutes? Tell me, what did that look like?
It looked ugly, but it was similar to the prison experience, because you are in the midst of all this negativity, and you somehow find a way to, I guess you become immune or numb to what would be a normalized or properly socialized emotional reaction. I've seen girls, I knew a man who was my friend, as that world allows friendship. I've seen him actually take an axe handle and break both her arms, stuff her under a car, And it's like in prison, where you have the things, see and don't see, hear and don't hear, mind your own business, And that, again, speaks to the depth of the sickness that comes from exploitative relationships, or embracing things that turn out to be not so glamorous as they initially appear. And I myself, though I didn't resort to the violence, there were times when I resorted to the threat of violence. And there was one girl that I punished by having us get naked in front of the other girls and a few guys that I had around for this demonstration, for this psychological attack upon her, that I made her stand on one leg on the coffee table all day. And when she said, baby, I need to use the bathroom, I said, okay, you standing on the bathroom. And I actually watched her, being humiliated by urinating on herself until I was satisfied that my point was across, and you don't want to undergo this type of punishment again. And I used the psychological.
You got to be built to be able to take that type of punishment, degradation, because the first thing that came to my mind was, please, nigga, please, is what came to my mind. I wish I would, I wish someone would. But again, it's a mindset, and it is definitely I guess that atmosphere that allows for something like that, because I can't even see myself allowing anybody to treat me that way. And you would think that
understand.
they would not either. And the other thing that's a bit of interest to me is that you went from not wanting to be a pimp to now handing out punishments if for whatever infractions that they your prostitutes did, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Did she not bring enough money in that day, or what was the reason for her punishment?
A number of things, because I spoke during the beginning of the program about the deceitfulness, about the trickery. Mm-hmm. Some of the girls are conniving to the point of being irritating when you know they're lying. Mm. And in this particular instance, there was a guy who was a friend of my mother's, and he was a singer. I was a singer, and we used to get together with a couple of other guys and just harmonize like the street corner doo-wops. But on this particular occasion, he had received a substantial income tax return, and I wanted the money after he showed it to me. And he didn't even know that this girl belonged to me. I introduced her as a girl, I can get you with her if you want to be with her. But when she went to turn the trick with him, when she came back, I was waiting for her to bring that income tax money back, but she had gotten the dude drunk, and I don't know what happened. She said that she didn't want to mess with him. And I was like, you don't want. You do what I tell you, B. It ain't about what you want. It's about what I tell you. You understand? And she telling me, then she shows me the motel room key. And I said, what am I going to do with that key? If I wanted to get a robbery case, I would have went with it myself. You understand?
Right,
and
right.
That was basically what that punishment was about.
I see. Well, we're and I'm gonna skip this last commercial break simply because I can make that executive decision. But because I want to make sure that we really get your entire story in. Something pivotal happened that made you get out of the game. What was that?
I wouldn't say that it was a particular that was like a series of events. Mm-hmm. One was during my first prison experience, my mother and my grandmother were visiting me. And my mother basically told me that, look, baby, I always told you that whatever it is that you want to be, if you can't be the best, be one of the best, even if you're going to be a crook. She said, but I hope to God you don't come back out here with that pimping blank teeth. And I was basically trying to amuse myself. And I asked my mother, I said, well, why do you feel like that? And she started to jab her finger into my face during visitation to emphasize her words, and they came out in like a syncopated rhythm. Because those girls have mothers who love them like I love you. Mm. And that was when the I guess the wall that I had built around masking my emotions started to crumble, because my mother had tears in her eyes, and that was something that I couldn't stand. Mm-hmm. And I trooped on. Some years later, during the time that my fiance was visiting me, she had started to bring her children, two of her daughters who were ages 7 and 9, to visit me. And I was sitting there between their mother and another woman. And throughout that visitation, for that 2-hour period, those girls just sat there with eyes on me like lasers. I had gotten a letter from them when they first met me, telling me that, I think you'll make a good daddy. And later that night, I lay there thinking about the look in their eyes. It's like I could hear one question. why you doing my mama like this? You know, because they could see her discomfort. And because I cherish those girls so much, you know, I didn't want them to look at me like that again. Mm-hmm. That was another step. And the third thing that was most important, I've always I had up until that point, I was straddling the fence without knowing, because I had the complaints of the militants and such about being exploited by the system. And I started to think in these words: how can I point the finger at the white man for exploiting us as a people? And I'm turning around sending these girls out here risking their health, their lives, their sanity. You understand? These things just started to pile up on me until there was no room in my heart for it, because the one thing that I never want to be viewed as is being a hypocrite. Mm-hmm. That was not the life I want. I didn't feel good about, you know, trying to tell younger brothers, you know, to educate yourself, to do this and that, because, you know, the black man has to be twice as good. And now that you're in prison, you're black, you're poor and uneducated, you're going to even have to double those numbers to beat the odds. And there was another part of my mind saying, well, you making an impression, but you're not walking the walk. You're just talking the talk.
That's right.
So I had to stop compartmentalizing my mind and unify. I'm either going to be on one side of the fence or on the other. And after, you know, a number of years of contemplation, the negative side, the fast lane, was no longer an acceptable alternative. Mm-hmm. And if I had to return to that life at this stage, I would starve to death, because I believe that I have too much compassion. I have too much love, and this is especially so for black women. But I've reached a point in my life to where I want respect, if not love. I want to extend that to all women, because I think this is how we make the world a better place. We've been entrusted as caretakers of this planet, not just as Adam was a husbandman, but I think that the greatest thing that we can do in order to please God is by our service to others. And that's what I identify myself as today, not necessarily an advocate for stopping abuse and abolishing sex trafficking, but I'm also deeply involved in reentry and helping people who are coming out of prison get their lives together. And
I think that is absolutely wonderful that you are walking your talk now, and that God has given you the time to make restitution, if you will, to society. And I do see you as even when you were out there pimping, that you were a compassionate soul, one with a conscience, you know. And so I applaud you for that, and to be able to turn, because money is good. Sex sells, and it's a multi-trillion-dollar business out here. So I applaud you for being able to walk away. Now, let's get into the solution of the matter. Now, one of the things that we're going to be talking about, and I actually have a guest who will come in December. She actually was a prostitute, a very high-end escort, and even a porn star who has turned her life as well. And she's going to come on the show and talk about how do you get out of the game as a prostitute. And so we will be talking about that. But we want to talk about how not to get in the game. You know, how can we discourage people from entering into becoming a trafficker and even a prostitute. Those who are, again, when we say prostitute, we're talking about those who are of age. We know that children cannot be prostitutes. They are just straight up victims. So sex trafficking victims. So how do we discourage people from not even starting the trafficking or pimping and not even getting into the prostitution?
I think that the best way to really make a dent in this thing, because I don't think we'll see the total eradication in our lifetime. But there are those of us who are committed to this struggle. We call it the upliftment of our people, but I call it the upliftment of all of mankind. Because if we can't coexist without certain negative behaviors and such, then we are doomed as a species. Now, if I had to speak to how do we prevent it, we prevent it through the Annabelles of this world. And people have to be willing. It's like, I know that somehow you get donations, you get support from organizations and such. We have to provide a broader platform, whether it's making movies as I do now, writing books as I do now, and this is still giving us room to make a dent and pass on the torch, because at some point I'm going to get too old. I'm going to have health complications that won't provide me with the energies to be full-time. So I'm saying that we just simply have to keep on making positive and productive strides by getting the message out. And
I hear you. I hear you.
It's like when I go to a prison to speak to a lifers group. Some of these guys have life with no parole. And I go in to try and inspire them, to give them hope that, hey, man, look at me. I'm Terry Eiland. I've been everywhere but the electric chair and seen everything but the wind. Done almost everything except kill a baby and burn up a church. It might sound kind of hip-hop-ish, but I'm letting them know that, look, man, if I can bring myself back from this, then you can too. And I want to be an exemplary force. I've spoken at colleges, I've spoken at schools, churches, I've talked to young guys on the buses. No matter where I happen to be, if I can't offer you something positive and productive, you get nothing from me.
That's good stuff.
And
that's really
what
good stuff.
I
it sounds like what you're saying is, how do you eat a 10-pound hamburger? Well, one bite at a time, and we have to keep it going. This thing has been handed down. This prostitution and trafficking and all that has been handed down for many, many, many centuries, and so we can't undo it that quickly. Sex trafficking didn't just happen in 2000. It's been happening starting in way back in the 1960s.
Reconstruction. Reconstruction.
Yeah, and so it's going to take some time, and I'm so glad that you are, like I said, you have seen that side, and now you're going to be on this side. And I talk to people about, I was preaching one day about inoculation. And, when we're being inoculated for a disease, normally within the serum, there is a little bit of that disease, that little bit of that virus in there. And so it'll help your body to combat it and learn how to combat that from the inside. And I believe when the body of Christ, hallelujah, has people like you and me who have lived in the world, been a part of the whole worldly secular structure, come into the body of Christ, there is a form of inoculation that is happening so that we can continue to strengthen the body, strengthen the kingdom, and to be able to fight against these things. Because we, the church, should have the power from on high to truly annihilate. And so I believe that you are part of the inoculation process. So I thank you for that. We have about 5 minutes left, and I want to make sure that I take time out to talk to you about, give you a chance to talk to us about some of the projects that you have going on. What your 5 to 10 years, planning looks like for your advocacy work.
Well, for my advocacy work, and please understand that I got into this because of my friend Khalif Shaquille as far as being an advocate. Mm-hmm. Because D. Dawkins Hagler, who has announced her intent to campaign for Secretary of State, she was former chair lady of the Congressional Black Caucus here in Georgia. When she approached Khalif about making the movie Black Girls Die Too, do something about Backpage, I had never even heard of Backpage.
Yeah.
And once I explored it, I'm like, yeah, I want to be a part of this. And where I see myself 5 to 10 years now, if God should grant me life, and I'm able to maintain my sanity, I think that the rewards from my writing efforts, this movie making, speaking engagements, my prayer is that I become empowered financially in order to, even set up training programs and such. Well, you know how people from my era, when I was growing up, they used to have us in these classes where the girls would be on one side of the room, the boys would be on the other side, teaching us how to approach a lady and ask her for a dance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then we have to return to a system of teaching children that allows their foundation to be based upon those positive and productive things, because you've heard the saying that a parent can only do their best because ultimately children choose their own path.
That's right.
And from my standpoint, I was a lifetime honor student. I even, in 6th grade, my principal came and got me to teach a 7th grade class because she couldn't get a substitute in time for the teacher who called in sick. I mean, I was viewed as being an intelligent young man, and when I left school to go into the Marine Corps, my teachers were literally crying because they saying, son, if you stay in school, you're going to be able to write your own ticket. But in retrospect, when I look at that, even though I've had some horrific experiences, being in the Georgia penal system for almost 38 years of my 64, then
wow.
I feel like you said that you have to have some type of experiential awareness of certain things in order to impact upon them, to the benefit of others. The saying, a person who hasn't been through anything, doesn't know anything. Mm-hmm. They don't have anything to offer. And it doesn't have to be street life. It could be, like you said, abusive relationship, because life is it's a fickle thing if people really looked at it. But the most important thing for me is that when I found myself at the bottom of a moral well, I was able to draw on values taught to me by my mother, grandmother, and I had been blessed to have my great-grandparents in my life until I was an adult. So when I needed to draw upon it, I wasn't drawing from an empty well.
Amen. We are almost done, and I hate to interrupt you. We're almost down to our time. Please give the audience a way to get in touch with you.
I can be reached at 770-899-3216. 770-899-3216.
Well, I appreciate you being on the show, and I know that they can get you on Facebook, and that's Terry, last name Eiland. Also go to our website, not our website, but our Facebook page, and you can find them on there. Thank you so much for being on the show, Mr. Eiland. I appreciate you and applaud you for all the work you do.
The appreciation is mine, ma'am. The
Thank
appreciation is mine for providing the platform.
Amen. Now it's time for the wisdom
Thank
to
you
reign.
so much.
When time gets restored, recall upon God's promises for your life. To make a donation or to get in touch with me or my team, please go to www.wealthmngt.org or follow us on Facebook. Thank you so much again for staying with us, and join us next week when we'll have yet another show just about how to prevent child abuse and sex trafficking. Bye-bye, everybody.
Down, afraid to let it out, shackles, chains, the hurt, the guilt, stain. I'm more than a conqueror. I'm more than a victim. I fight, I win. The chains are broken. 'Cause I reign, you reign, we reign, he reigns. I reign, we reign together.